So thank you, everyone. You are in here with us with Mr. Stephen Blanco. We're going to look at connecting the classroom, love first, teach second. Mr. Blanco is a high school music teacher in Las Vegas, Nevada. Really amazing biography and background here with the mariachi bands and all his background with that work, going from local to national, and being one of the youngest teachers ever to win the Nevada Heart of Education. I'm going to stop talking, but before we move on, my name is Mary Holzclaw. I'm with the Department of Education. I will be your moderator, and I will be hanging in the background. I will be monitoring in the chat and providing any technical assistance. But in the meantime, I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Blanco so we can hear all of these amazing things. Take it away.
Thank you, Mary, and hello, everybody. I hope everyone can hear me well. We did some tests earlier. My name is Stephen Blanco. I'm the director of mariachi at Las Vegas High School. Go Wildcats. Just a little bit about this session is it's the first time I'm presenting this exact PD. It's being ran as a magazine article, and I kind of have transferred it into a PD. So it'll be out in SBO magazine in a couple months here, but I wanted to do a PD on it and see kind of how that works. So bear with me and please, be engaging in the chat. There's going to be a lot of discussion time here. So thank you for kind of letting me test this one out here at this great conference that everyone has put together. A little bit about me is I hold a bachelor's in music education from Western Michigan University. I took the position at Las Vegas High School at 21 years old, directly out of college, and it's been great ever since. So one of the things that I'm specializing in right now is curriculum instruction. So I'm about to be finished with my master's in that, and I've successfully started two really successful mariachi programs here in Las Vegas. At Keller Middle School, at Las Vegas High School, and this is not widely announced yet, but I just signed on to start the program at University of Nevada, Las Vegas this week. So we're super, super excited to take this to the university level. But, mariachi's been here for 20 years in Las Vegas, so it's nothing new. We've just done it in a new way at Las Vegas High School. And I think a big part of that is the connection that we're able to make when you love first and teach second. So thank you guys all for being here. I'm not a huge fan of showing a bunch of videos and a bunch of, slides. I only have like 10 slides in the whole thing. So I'm probably going to talk at you a lot. There's a few videos, but I do want us to just consider for a moment what the word love means to us in our lives, how we receive it, how we give it, obviously not in only the romantic way, but with friends, with students, with mentors, with different kinds of family members, because we're going to be kind of going back to that a lot today. For me, one big thing that I always go back to is putting yourself in someone else's shoes when we're talking about love and connecting or providing anything to somebody. And there was actually a great video that I wanted to start the presentation off with, just to kind of get us thinking a little bit about that. So I'm going to go ahead and share that with you. So that they produce a lot of videos like that. Many of them are religious, but I think, when I had an original video to show, and it's pretty popular. It's from the Cleveland Clinic, and it's about patient care, and they showed it to their, um, their staff when they get hired, but it kind of went viral because it's all about empathy. And I think that's what putting yourself in someone else's shoes really is. In that video, we saw a lot of different situations that we might have been in the past, but certainly that someone around us is currently in right now, even today in this room. And I think sometimes as teachers, we forget that, there's just such a big human concept to what we're doing. And it's not, a job. Yes, so many of us have to make data points. I mean, I'm a music teacher. So yes, my successes and failures are very public on stage, but I don't necessarily have to meet data. I can't imagine what that would feel like, having someone looking at my data and all that. I'm sure it gets very stressful. So I think sometimes easy to be like, oh, these are all little humans that we're working with. And then there's such a human part of education that, in my opinion, can easily get whisked away when we're so focused on curriculum and cramming everything in that we have to cram in, even in the music classroom. I mean, for example, next week, I got a call 1 week ago that they want us to do a performance at Allegiant Stadium for UNLV halftime. That's awesome, but that's also like, well, what? It's, when things aren't expected, you have to cram. And even with them in rehearsal last week, we're adding extra rehearsal, and I noticed myself getting frustrated because some of the music isn't right. They didn't go home and learn this. They didn't go home and learn that. And I have a very good relationship with my students' parents. And one of them was telling me, like, Mr. Blanco, you have to realize, like, they have all these other things to worry about too. Even though, they're in this top ensemble, everybody has things going on in their life. And so kind of have to put yourself in other people's shoes. Recently got in a little misunderstanding with a friend about some travel plans. And I couldn't understand why she was so frustrated that I hadn't made these travel plans yet. I lag on making travel plans. I don't know about you, but I'm the kind of person who was on a plane last week in LA and didn't book my hotel until I was on the plane. That's sometimes what I do. Not great. But my friend was frustrated about my lack of, effort, is what it looked like to her. And I was annoyed, and I didn't understand it until I put myself in her shoes and tried to realize, okay, why does this person feel this way? And I think as teachers, we have to think about that a lot. Really quick, just so I can kind of see who we have here. Can you guys type in the chat or shout out loud or whatever you want to do, like what grade level you teach? So I teach high school at this point, and college, I guess now, but mostly almost adults, many juniors and seniors. What other grade levels do we have over here? And I am going to look for how to see the chat in this view, because I hope you guys are saying
Looks
something.
like, oh no, you have quite a mix here, from elementary to middle to high school. I think I saw an even collegiate grade, but I could be wrong. I see adults. Nice little mix here.
Yeah, that's awesome. For me, my beginnings, when I was in high school and early college, I was working a lot with kindergarten and first grade, general music. And I did a small stint in middle school just to start a program, but mostly my experience has been in high school, which I think is a great place for me to be, because sometimes I can't handle the crying. And I sometimes don't realize, well, middle schoolers just cry because they're in middle school, and that's what happens. But that's a big thing that I had to start realizing when I was teaching middle school. It's like, oh, okay, this child is crying, and It's not necessarily because anything is horrible, but we just have to figure it out. Yes, Ms. Strong, hormones, indeed. So when I get them as juniors and seniors, they are a little bit more leveled out, I think. So that's my experience a little bit. So if there will be a couple times where, I'll say what works for me, and I'd love to know like what works for you in a similar way at your different levels or in your different subject areas. Are there any other music teachers here? Miss Harris, I see you. Yay. Yeah, so I think in music, we get away from a lot of the data sometimes. Most of the time, I think it's a good thing. But one of my APs and close friends, her name is Nancy Paredes. She's now the director of accreditation. It's a new position in this CCSD, because her thing is data. And she did a big presentation on John Hattie's visible learning study. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that. But it's kind of been an ongoing study for many years now. And at this point, it is one of the most extensive studies in student achievement to ever exist. And that's kind of, when I thought about putting on a presentation about love in the classroom, that's very touchy-feely. That's very not necessarily what a lot of things you'll see in professional learning are about. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to back it with a bunch of data. And that's what we're going to do. So there are 252 influences on student achievement that John Hattie and this big visible learning LLC studied. There were 130,000 different studies and many, many meta-analysis, and it included 400 million students. So it really is one of the most extensive educational studies in history of any kind. And it studied a lot of different things. Things from commonplace examples that it looked at were practice tests, students feeling disliked, teachers getting feedback. It really just covered a whole arch of what affects student achievement in any kind of way: academic, home life, student perception, all of this. And the way that it was measured was using Cohen's decimal system, which the numbers are very small, but it's really a very large difference when you look at it. So where the study is it goes from negative 0.9 to 1.57. If it's above 0.04, that is one of our hinge points. So anything above that, we are saying has had some kind of positive effect on student achievement. If it's very, very low or negative, it's had a negative effect on student achievement. And there's not a ton of things that are super negative. There's many things that are positive, but there are just a few things that it says are extremely, extremely positive and have positively affected student achievement. And what I noticed when she was giving this presentation is that so many of those things are 100% controlled by a teacher. And that gives us a big charge, right? So, it shows practice tests. That's probably a thing that a lot of teachers do. We do it all the time in the music classroom in our own way. 0.54. So it's just above that 0.4 hinge point. It does positively affect student achievement, but not a whole ton. Students feeling disliked, negative 0.19. When the lowest is negative 0.9. So it does have a negative effect on student achievement. We can see that feedback gives even more help than practice tests. Interventions with students with learning needs, so 504s or IEP plans, very helpful. Depression, negative 0.36, that's a pretty big one. And one of the other ones that stuck out to me was two-parent families, 0.23, that's quite low. And a lot of times we talk about kids have to have two parents or or it's going to be this, that to me was pretty low. A two-parent family, and this is how he explained it, might have a positive effect on student learning achievement. Um, Look how much higher interventions for students with learning needs it is, or practice tests or feedback. Those are things that teachers can control right there in the classroom. So there's so much more in our control than we realize. The number two, or in the new study, it might be a number three, biggest influence on student achievement is teacher estimates of achievement. And my definition of this is, does the teacher succeed in ensuring that the student fully believes they can achieve? Out of 252 things that they studied, this is number two or number three if it's the new study. Does the teacher succeed in ensuring the student fully believes that they can achieve? We all believe that students can achieve for the most part. I think every teacher has some belief of that. But how are we doing at making sure they feel like that? That's a big charge, 1.29. It's huge. It has a huge impact, almost twice the impact of feedback after tests. Twice the impact of feedback after tests is if the student believes that we believe in them. Huge, absolutely huge. So how do we go from thinking about this to love in the classroom? I want everyone to kind of just take a second, and I want you to tell me what love means to you. My answer was putting yourself in someone else's shoes, is being empathetic. Maybe some of you have something right off the top of your head, or maybe you have to think about it, but I do want to take a couple minutes, and there's going to be some discussion here. So it would be great to see, like, what does love in the classroom look like to you? Yes, Lydia, being able to talk about life beyond the classroom. That's actually an NEPF standard, is us making sure that the students feel we are interested in their lives, not just in their class, but their actual life. Dr. Morris, offering grace. My mom always tells me that I have to have more grace, and it's true. Sometimes I can be the scary music teacher that wants it to be perfect all the time. Yes, we teach humans, not students. That is for certain. I love this one, holding high expectations, but understanding that there are things beyond school that kids go through. That's huge, because that is kind of like the other, especially in a very successful high school top music program where you need the students to perform perfectly almost. You have to hold them to those high expectations, but then when they mess up, you have to have that understanding as well, because they're not professional musicians. They're still little humans. Kindness, yes. As a first year teacher, I was not kind. I was 21. I was afraid of most children at this point. I grew up in a very affluent area, and moving to Las Vegas was very different for me. And so I felt like I had to put on this like angry face. You know, that's what they tell you when you're a young teacher. For the first month of school, don't smile, right? So I did that little game for a while, and it kind of worked. But there came a point where it wouldn't work anymore. and I had to kind of change who I was as a teacher. So part of this presentation is a change for me personally that I had to see. So kindness, I think, is very important. The Buddha says that to love is to understand and comfort. I really got this one because these words are things that we can really, really build upon. So to me, comfort is a huge part of like what I get out of my loved ones and people who I know care about me. I feel comfort from them. How can we create comfort for students in our classroom? Because comfort can come in a lot of different ways. It's not necessarily a hug, it's not a high five, it's not necessarily affirmation on how one's feeling. Um, Comfort can come from making a student feel confident about their performance. Comfort can come from allowing a student to have extra time to understand something. Ms. Strong says, ask them. Yeah, I think one big thing is I do ask my students a lot, what do you need? How do you need to learn this? And even if they can't answer at that time, it's going to start getting them, oh, I have control over my education. That was also one of the things that John Hattie and his team studied is when students feel in control of their own education, has a very positive effect on their achievement. So I think a big thing is we do have to be comforting to students in the classroom, but that doesn't mean we have to be comforting in the same way that we understand the word comfort. This one, teachers have power over things that students feel are absolutely consequential to their success and happiness. I'm going to say it out loud again. Teachers have power over things that students feel are absolutely consequential to their success and happiness. And I kind of just want you to take a minute to think, there's not that many people in our lives who we feel have power over our full success and happiness, right? We pay our bills, most of us probably. We are the ones who have to put our own food on the table. We've chosen our path. We might have significant others, our spouses, who probably have some control over our feelings, family members, and whatnot. But for the most part, we are kind of in charge of how our day goes, right? Students every single day are being told by other people what they must do to be successful all day long. The math test that they have in their Algebra 2 or their pre-calc class might be the only thing that's been on their mind for 3 full days because they don't have to pay rent. They don't have to worry about those things. Their minds are focused on this. While our minds might be focused on other things. If we have kids, put a roof over their head, all of that. The students' minds are focused on those things. And those things are absolutely consequential to their success and happiness in their mind. Last year, or 2 years ago, I think now, I was a senior class advisor for our student council, the high school level. And, we do like an election for student body president. And for some reason, and I don't know if it's because we as adults showed them the example, but this election got a little ugly on the school campus. And we had to kind of chill it down a little bit. There was one student who had been in student council all her life that wanted to be student body president. There was one student who had never been in student council and was still allowed to run for student body president. And so it caused like a big riff. And a lot of harmful things were said. And so I said to my student one time, it's going to be okay no matter what happens. Just know that. But to her, winning that was absolutely consequential to their success and happiness. And while I didn't have any power over how an election might go for doing it the fair way, I did have power over making sure that she felt it was going to be okay one way or the other. And I don't think we realize that a lot. Every day we have kids that come in and just a smile from us could change their entire day. And I didn't realize that until one of my students finally just told me, like, because I'm not a morning person, just so everyone knows, I hate the morning. I just hate it. School starts at 6:50 for me. It's just a rough time. I also have a resting, not so nice face. So when I walk into school in the morning, one of my students who I taught for 5 straight years, because I taught at the middle school as well, told me, just so you know, like when you look like that and you walk in, like it sets the tone for all of us for the entire day. Because for me, my students all bring in their instrument to the classroom before they start their day. So I'm the first teacher they see. Um, that had a major impact on me because even if I don't feel like smiling at 7 in the morning, which I can promise you I never do, ever, not once, um, my little walk into school, I mean, you have to put on the face for them a little bit. And it's not being fake. It's just this is what they need right now. And it brought me back to my first job in high school. I was an employee at a movie theater, and our boss told us something very similar to what we talked about earlier: is you don't know what anyone's going through, and when you come here, I just want you to make sure that all of our guests feel safe, feel happy. They're coming to see a movie because they might need a night out, they might be going through a divorce, they might want to be having fun with friends, but either way, we need you to make them feel good because they're at a movie theater and that's what it's about. And that has stuck with me all my life, um, because I mean, all of us have gone on a bad day to the grocery store or to the bank, which I hate doing. I hate going to the bank so much. And sometimes you just get that one really nice bank teller or grocery store clerk that can really change your day. Students can even have more of an impact because they're so young still. Um, and I'm just looking at the notes. Yes, Ms. Strong, fake it till you make it. I have said that a lot. Um, and they do smile back. And one thing my students do every day now is they shake my hand, even when I have the scary face on. And it reminds me to change it. Ms. Murphy, I love that. I handwrite notes every single class and hand it to a student online to tell them they did great in class today. Yes, that is so amazing. They will work harder for you if they feel cared about. Okay, and one big thing, especially in the music classroom, is they have to work hard or it will publicly be bad. Okay. Um, and they all have to work hard, especially in my top group. It's called Mariachi Joya. They've been named the nation's #1 mariachi ensemble. Um, they, if one person doesn't do well, then they all suffer because of it. And I take that on me. If I have to make sure that that person is okay. Did they eat this morning? Is everything okay at home? How are their grades? I mean, it's a long list because of such a large expectation that we have for them. Smiley faces mean a lot. Yes. And then can you believe like some of these little things mean so much to some students that really don't take a lot from us? Um, and you just kind of have no idea until you ask, you know. Um, I love that I appreciate you and that I'm so happy you're in my class because especially, when we're in high school, I don't know if you feel this for the other high school teachers, because I taught at middle school and high school at the same time, one year. I was teaching 5 classes at the high school and 3 classes at the middle school. It was nuts. Um, and I would have to change like the kind of teacher I was depending on the grade level. In high school, I'm really like this. I'm very much myself. But when I went to middle school, it felt like I had to put on the Blanco show. Like if you let them breathe for 1 second on their own, it's over. Um, so, but in high school, because I think some of us teachers are a little bit, I don't want to say toned down, but we don't have to keep them as engaged every second because their attention spans are a little bit longer. Some of them might think that we don't care for them as much or we don't want them to be there. Um, After all, it's a job. We do still have to go to work. We're doing it partially to pay our bills, right? So I think it is important to tell them that words are very important. It's something that I have certainly noticed. Just gonna check my timing here to make sure I'm doing okay. So I'm going to send you guys a link in the chat right now. And it's a link to the 252 influences on John Hattie's student achievement. And really, so many of them we can have some kind of power over. There's a specific section on there that was, okay, this is about teachers, but even the stuff that's not about teachers, we can still influence. So I'm going to send you guys that link right now. I'm going to give you some time. And I'd like you guys to pick one influence on student achievement and how can we add love or whatever word you want. If you want to use comfort, you want to use understanding, you want to use empathy to that to make it better. How have you done it? How do you think you could do it? All that. So let me send this link to you. And I'll just give you a couple minutes. And then right now is a good time if anyone has questions or things to say while we're kind of just taking a minute for ourselves to look through this. I'm also looking at the chat. Can you guys see this chat box up here on my screen, or does it look nice? Is it like in the middle of the screen? Okay, I'll keep that down here. Okay. So does anybody want to share something they might have? Like you can talk, you don't have to put it in the chat. I'd love to hear someone else existing.
I can. So I went to a conference one time. I've recognized in the past that like even eye contact and making sure you raise your eyebrows or have just intentional, I communicated with you, is super important. And I went to a conference one time where the presenters suggested that you ask your class at the end of any day, have I connected with you? Like, have you given eye contact with me, or have I talked to you throughout this class? And have them raise their hand and identify like a percentage, or even sometimes it's a side of a room that you avoid, that you don't even know you do it, you know. But I thought that was a really interesting thing. It made me come back and analyze at the end of the class, did I make a connection with all of those students, you know? So that's it. Just a thought.
Yeah, I like that. It's hard to make sure you are connecting with everybody, right? We all have students that we for sure, okay, yeah, like we're alike or we're similar, we hit it off, or the student's outgoing, so it's easier to talk to them. But everybody needs the same thing, you know, or this at least a same level of connection. What else?
I'll just keep talking unless somebody else does it. But along those same lines, I'll, you know, those, like you mentioned, the students that you connect with, it's students who are always forward as well. You know, they'll come to you. And those ones that kind of need you a little bit more, they get easily lost. So sometimes you just have to make a bigger effort for them.
I wanted to just kind of ask a question, maybe more than anything, and I'm sorry, my lighting is bad, but I was looking at that visual and I'm just wondering, as much as we are trying to, well, at least the big push in education that I've noticed recently is that teacher facilitator more than the teacher, you know, so teacher facilitator, everything student led. And I'm looking at some of those points on the visual and I wonder if that tells us something about kind of that direction they're trying to push education in and how effective it is, because a lot of those upper, you know, the bigger numbers there are directly related to how students are feeling and how students are receiving what we're giving them. So I think it actually reinforces what I already believed, which is letting students get in the driver's seat rather than trying to teach them how to drive. I don't know. That's just what I wondered, what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, so just a little bit of background about what a mariachi looks like. In band or in choir or these professional ensembles, you have a conductor that's on stage with them, right? When you go to a band concert, the teacher is conducting the band. Well, I actually don't ever step on stage during my concert. Because in a mariachi, there's no conductor. It's usually the lead violinist that starts and stops every song. And so that's what we do in my classroom as well. So we have someone called a student director, and they literally do everything from the start of the performance to the end of the performance. Of course, if something major goes wrong, I'm there. It hasn't, knock on wood. But even to the point where, for example, today, my students performed at the Boulevard Mall. It's big week for us, Hispanic Heritage Month, right? And they perform from 12 to 12:30. So at 12, I shake the student director's hand. He goes on and he calls the songs. They have about 90 minutes of music learned, memorized. And so he just chose 30 minutes at random while he was up there, started and stopped every song. And also those songs are, I would say, 75% chosen by the students in the group. So they all get to pick a song and we will do that song that year. So I'm just thinking back into my time as a music student. I never got to pick the songs that we did. So, you know, I totally agree with putting them in the driver's seat. I don't necessarily know how I could see that happen, let's say, in a math class. I mean, I went to a Kagan training earlier this year, and I think one big thing is differentiation. Making students choose how they want to learn would be a big way to do that, like in the general ed classroom. So yeah, I guess that's my thoughts on that. Allison, I think it also was very interesting that teacher-student relationship was just sitting there in the middle of the pack. But what I did notice is a lot of the things that were above that on the pack are inherent on a positive teacher-student relationship. So if you don't have a good relationship with a student, you're never going to get them to believe that you believe they're going to do well. So that, you know, that was number 3 that we talked about. I think number 1 is collective teacher efficacy, which means that collectively all the teachers are working towards a goal and believing that students can achieve. Not just one, not just some, collective teacher efficacy. And that's the big thing that someone in the district here in CCSD focused on this year was collective teacher efficacy. Every teacher in a student's day has to give them that feeling. And if they do that, then that's how positive it can become. And what is it, 1.5 or 49, that number 1.57, huge. I mean, literally huge. I mean, it puts a lot on us, you guys. It's a little crazy, puts a lot on us. So that was just kind of me bringing in some data. I really liked the visible learning study, and I really liked, sharing my thoughts on connecting in the classroom. I wanted to merge them a little bit. And I'm not saying this to brag in any way, but I do get asked a lot, like, Stephen, what is your secret? How have you got these students to perform at this level? This is only year 6, and a year and a half of that time was COVID, and we're still, at the level that we're at. And my answer always is, well, you just have to know the power you hold. You just have to know the power you hold. Because it's so much. Dr. Tim Lautzenheiser, who is a very big music education, I almost want to call him a philosopher at this point, but very big. He's a speaker. He does a lot of big speaking events. He got me this job in Vegas, and I remember the day he got me this job, he gave a keynote, and he just held his hand out like this. He looked at us, because we were all college students. He said, if you only knew right now the power that you hold in this hand, if you only knew. And it gets to you sometimes, because especially with my top group, I'm with those kids all the time. They do 100 performances a year. We did, I think, 4 states and 9 different cities on tour last year. And so it's a huge thing. And so we see each other at our best, and we see each other at not our best. And we have to figure that out. But one thing that I realize is, no matter what's going on, if I looked okay, if I looked happy, if I didn't look tired, everybody else fell into line. And that's because of the huge connection that we've created in that classroom and in that specific group. I'm going to show you one more video, and then I'm going to close with a little story, and then we'll have some time for questions probably. So this video is just a video about how it's worked in my classroom with my students, what they've done, the successes that they've had. And I 100%, I don't attribute it to my knowledge of being an amazing musician. I don't attribute it to working 10 times harder than everybody else. I attribute it to the connection that we have in the classroom. And that's why I did this presentation. So just a little video that I hope you'll enjoy.
Passion, family, That's what makes us different. Nothing can replace the feeling of performing with the people you love.
Sorry. That quote at the end of that was from my student director from last year. His name is Jared. Um, Founded the program with me at Keller Middle School, is now a senior um, at Las Vegas High. And that was his quote. And he said, you know, passion, family, nothing can replace performing, the feeling of performing with people that you love. And I know maybe in the music classroom, it seems like it might be easier to create those connections between students, but I know that it can be done everywhere, you know. And again, the quote that he said was, passion, family, that's what makes us different. Nothing can compare to performing with the people that you love. And that's what's taken us where we've been. You know, we did DC a couple years ago. We went on a national tour. That's why those students are able to be pushed to the point that they're able to be pushed, because they know that they're in a room with people who really, really love them. And I think it's it is probably easier to maybe do that in a music classroom, but I think it really can be done everywhere. Just as passionate as I'm about music, I know that you guys are all passionate about the subjects that you teach. And I know that there's a way to make that happen in other places. And I think maybe that's the next step for this presentation or for connecting in the classroom. I'm going to finish with just a little story. And I wrote a little bit of it down, so please excuse me because I don't want to miss anything. 5 years ago, I had a student that struggled really, really a lot with coming to school, participating with their grades, but was very nice, very likable by his peers, didn't ever get in trouble. And then when the pandemic hit, I think it was these students who took it really hard. And he certainly did, as well as many of my students that were used to performing. That's what they loved, and they couldn't do it anymore. So it was really hard for a lot of them. This student had a solid, maybe 1.5 GPA freshman year. Good family dynamic, but no one is really very educated. No one has gone to college in his family. He's the youngest of 4 siblings, all of whom have kids and families of their own at very young ages. He struggled with depression, anxiety, all of that kind of stuff. We started him on violin because that's, you know, the class he got placed into. And he liked it, but one day during the pandemic, my assistant teacher and I, we needed a bass player. And what you do in mariachi when you need a bass player is you find the one that's going to be the most devoted, because that bass player holds down the entire group. You only have one of them, and they have to be on top of it. And we had some bass players that already knew how to play the bass, but they just like really weren't that person for this top group that's going to be going and performing for presidents and all of that. And we thought about this student, you know, who's playing the violin, not really loving the violin, but you can tell he loves being there. You can tell he just needs something. We talked about how it would be a risk. Right at this point, you know, when you have a program that's this established, you have to continue to do that, or else people start asking questions and admin starts getting funky. So, you know, these decisions are highly calculated. We took the risk. We dropped a bass off at his house during the pandemic. And, you know, we started bass lessons with him during class. Fast forward, he was a senior 2 years ago, and I was cleaning out my desk. I just got a new office and a new classroom. Yay, it's really nice. And there was a note in there. I keep like all my thank you notes in a little drawer. Now they used to be hung up, but there was a note and it said, Mr. Blanco, I may not always say it, but I mean it when I say it. Thank you for all the extra effort you make to help me grow as a student and as a person. And thank you for the challenges you encourage me to face to help you become, or to help me become who I am. I really trust you to guide me to success and will always be grateful for your support. Well, 2 weeks ago, I just hired that person to be my assistant director. He is a 4.0 student at the College of Southern Nevada. He is been named as the #1 guitarrón player, #1 bass player in the state of Nevada. And that was last year. And now that he's in the college, they are the collegiate national championships, national champions for mariachi. And so, and at that time back then, I had no idea when we were giving him this instrument that was going to make such an effect on his life. And that's just one example. I asked my students yesterday, I shot them all, I blasted them all a remind message. I was like, hey, I'm giving this presentation tomorrow. What are your thoughts like? Because we don't really talk about love in the classroom. I mean, that's not something I talk about with them. But I just put it on a remind. I was like, what are your thoughts on this? Like, if you feel comfortable giving a quote, please send me one. Some of them did, and I want to read them, a couple of them, just because this is this presentation from the student's eyes. Ashley says, I think connecting with students and love has affected my learning in a positive light. It doesn't make me feel like I'm working for the pressure of maintaining a good grade, but rather it makes me feel like I'm working for my genuine interest in the class. Having a teacher I'm able to connect with makes me feel more engaged with the subject rather than having it feel like a chore. Naomi says, I think that the care you give all of us makes us feel cared for. You're like a figure we can all look up to, and we also listen and follow the advice you give us. But besides that, you make sure we're doing good academically, and it honestly makes us feel more motivated that you care about our other classes. And the last one, this is from a freshman. They said that love or care from teachers has affected my learning in many ways. It shows me that I have someone I can count on if I need help with anything at school, and it makes me feel confident with asking more questions and getting help without having to struggle to answer questions that teachers are asking. And so they're not just talking about me, they're talking about their teachers and their other classes. Because those are the places that are honestly they're struggling with. My kids are struggling in math, some of them in English. And at Las Vegas High School, we really do believe in love first, teach second. So that's my big philosophy. I feel like that's what we have to do. I'll leave you with this quote from Dr. Adolph Brown. He's the youngest ever tenured professor. He wrote a book about trauma-informed education, about how to teach students who have had trauma, which in Las Vegas especially, a lot of them have. He says, I didn't come to teach you, I came to love you, and love will teach you. So that's what I believe. I believe we can do it in every classroom, and I believe that that's what changes people's lives, and it's up to us to do it. So I think we're coming near the end, but does anybody have any questions or anything for me about the presentation?
I think all I can do is echo the thank yous that I'm seeing in the chat, and this was extremely enjoyable for myself. I hope it was for those attending. I can't wait to read the article, and I think you like knocked it out of the park with putting this as a professional learning opportunity. So bravo. I greatly enjoyed the story that you shared and just the activities and the videos. So getting a little emotional.
Yeah. I mean, you guys, you put me at the end of the day. I was like, oh my gosh, everyone's gonna be asleep. So had to add the personal story in there. That wasn't part of the plan until like 2 days ago. So
Well, no, you rocked it. Almost stopped the recording really quickly.